She gave a stranger a ride in the rain. A week later, that simple act dragged her into a world of wealth, judgment, and whispers that she would never escape. Naomi Blake was driving home through the storm, her old car trembling under the weight of the wind. The streets were empty, drowned in sheets of rain. That's when she saw him, a tall man in a soaked suit, standing still as if daring the storm to break him. She slowed, her hands tightening on the wheel. Every voice of caution told her to keep driving, but her heart spoke louder. She pulled over, rolled down the window, and whispered, "Do you need a ride?" He stepped inside, carrying the storm with him, his silence heavier than words. Naomi didn't know it yet, but this stranger was billionaire William Hayes, and her life was about to be tested in ways she could never imagine. What do you think happens when two worlds collide, one built on survival, the other on power? Share your guess below and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. That night in the storm was only the beginning. To understand how deeply it would change her life, you have to know the world Naomi was already carrying. Naomi Blake was 28, living in a cramped apartment in Queens with her younger brother. By day, she was a waitress, balancing trays heavier than her tired arms wanted to hold. By night, she collapsed into bed, too drained to remember what hope felt like. On the counter sat stacks of unpaid bills, each one shouting louder than the last. Rent overdue, electricity cut notices, loans that never seemed to shrink. Survival was her full-time job. Naomi once dreamed of designing gowns. Her sketchbooks were hidden under her bed, filled with lines that once promised beauty. Now they collected dust, relics of a dream she no longer believed belonged to her. Every morning she pulled on her uniform, tied her apron, and told herself today she would make it through. She smiled at customers who rarely looked her in the eye. Behind that smile, she hid the quiet truth. She was drowning long before the storm brought a stranger into her car. Naomi's younger brother, Daniel, was 21 and studying medicine at Columbia. Brilliant, determined, he carried their parents' old dream of becoming a doctor. Naomi carried everything else. When their parents died in a car accident, she stepped into both roles, sister and guardian. She kept Daniel in school, no matter what it cost her. 16-hour days were her normal. She worked 2 jobs when one wasn't enough. She counted tips by candlelight when the power company cut the lights. Daniel never saw the full picture. She hid the overdue bills, the nights she cried herself to sleep, the weight of exhaustion pressing her chest. He thought she was strong. She wanted him to keep believing that. Her dream of design became a sacrifice. She folded it away like the sketches she once loved. Every stitch of hope went into Daniel's future instead of her own. Naomi told herself it was worth it, that keeping him in school mattered more than her forgotten ambitions. But some nights, when the silence grew heavy, she wondered if she was slowly disappearing behind her sacrifice. The diner was crowded, filled with clinking silverware and murmurs of tired voices. Naomi moved from table to table, refilling coffee cups, scribbling orders on her pad. She hardly noticed when a regular customer lingered at the counter, watching her write. "Is that a sketch?" the woman asked gently, tilting her head toward Naomi's pad. Naomi froze. She had doodled a wedding gown in the margin while waiting for the kitchen. Lines flowed like silk, her hands moving before she realized. Embarrassed, she flipped the page. "Don't hide it," the woman said with a smile. "That's beautiful." Naomi shrugged, her cheeks warm. "Just a doodle." But the woman shook her head. "No, it's more than that. You have talent. Don't waste it." For the rest of her shift, Naomi carried those words with her. They lit a spark inside she thought had burned out long ago. On her break, she pulled out an old sketchbook from her bag. Turning through its pages, she remembered the girl she used to be, the one who believed her art could change something. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. It was close to midnight when Naomi finished her extra shift. Her feet ached, her apron smelled of grease, and exhaustion blurred her eyes. She wrapped her coat tight and stepped into the night. The city was swallowed by a storm. Rain lashed the sidewalks, wind roared through the empty streets. Her car, old and rattling, protested as she started it, but finally came alive. Naomi drove slowly, wipers struggling against the flood on her windshield. Every streetlight flickered like a warning. Most people had found shelter, but she had no choice. Rent didn't wait for weather. Halfway down Fifth Avenue, she saw him, a tall figure, unmoving, standing alone in the downpour. His suit clung to him, rain soaking his hair and face, but he stood as if the storm belonged to him. Naomi's heart pounded. What kind of man refused to run from a storm like this? She almost kept driving. She almost listened to the voice that told her to be careful, but something about his stillness pulled her closer. She slowed, the old car shaking, and pressed her foot gently on the brake. Naomi's hands shook slightly as the stranger opened the door and slid inside. Rainwater pooled on the worn seat, but she said nothing. He smelled of wet earth, steel, and something expensive she couldn't name. He sat quietly, his posture straight even in the cramped space. His eyes were tired, shadowed with something heavier than the storm outside. Naomi felt his presence fill the car, pressing against her chest in a way she couldn't explain. For several blocks they drove in silence. The wipers struggled, the engine groaned, but the quiet between them was louder than the storm. She dared a glance at him. His jaw was tight, his gaze locked on the window. He looked like a man used to being in control, but tonight he seemed broken. Naomi gripped the wheel. She didn't know who he was, but she knew what loneliness looked like, and in that moment she recognized it in him. Finally, his voice cut through the storm, deep, low, yet fragile. Sometimes you stand in the rain because you need to feel something real. Naomi's breath caught. She had lived that emptiness, the days of routine that made her feel invisible, the nights when silence felt heavier than words. She answered softly, "Life makes you understand pain, even when you don't want to." He turned, studying her profile. In the glow of passing streetlights, his gray eyes searched her face as if he could see through every mask she wore. For the first time in years, Naomi didn't feel like she had to explain herself. He already understood. The storm outside raged on, but inside the car it felt strangely calm. Two strangers, bound by the ache of carrying too much. Two worlds that should never have met, sharing the simplest truth: pain had taught them both how to survive. When they reached a towering building in Midtown, the stranger leaned forward. "Here," he said quietly. Naomi pulled over, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't name. He hesitated with his hand on the door, then looked back at her. The stormlight reflected in his eyes. "I owe you one." Naomi tried to smile. "You don't owe me anything." His lips curved just slightly, the first trace of warmth she'd seen on his face. "Someday, I'll prove you wrong." Then he was gone, stepping into the glass doors, leaving her car colder without him. She drove off, telling herself it was nothing, just a ride for a stranger in need. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Something had shifted in that silence, something she couldn't shake. The next morning, reality returned with cruel sharpness. Naomi woke to the sight of bills spread across her counter. Red letters screamed overdue: rent, utilities, loans. She pushed them aside and poured herself cheap coffee, pretending she didn't notice the balance in her account. She smiled at her brother before he left for class, hiding the fear in her chest. Her body ached from endless shifts. Her dreams of design sat buried in sketchbooks under the bed. She told herself they didn't matter anymore. Dreams didn't pay for groceries. Dreams didn't keep Daniel in school. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw those gray eyes in the storm. She felt the weight of his words. "I owe you one." Naomi shook it off. He was gone. Another part of a world she didn't belong to. She had work to do, bills to fight, a life to hold together. Still, the memory lingered, soft as rain on her skin. It was during another long shift at the diner that something unexpected happened. A well-dressed man in his 50s sat at the counter, watching her sketch absent-mindedly on an order pad. "Is that yours?" he asked, pointing to the gown forming beneath her pen. Naomi flushed and tried to close the pad. He stopped her gently. "That's remarkable." She shook her head. "It's nothing, just doodles." He introduced himself as Richard Patterson. His daughter was getting married and they hadn't found the right dress. He explained how his wife had seen Naomi's sketches before and admired them. Before Naomi could protest, he handed her his card. "I'd like you to design her gown. You have vision, Miss Blake. Don't waste it." Naomi stood frozen, the card burning in her hand. For the first time in years, someone outside her world had seen her talent. And with that, a door she thought was locked forever cracked open. Naomi sat at her small kitchen table with Richard Patterson's card still in her hand. For hours, she stared at it, wondering if it was real. Finally, she pulled out her old sketchbook, the one she hadn't touched in years. Her pencil moved almost on its own. Lines flowed, shapes formed, and soon a dress appeared across the page. Elegant, bold, everything she once dreamed of creating. She stayed up late, sketching until her fingers cramped. Fabric ideas, patterns, details she hadn't thought about since her parents died. Each stroke reminded her of who she used to be, the young woman who believed in beauty, who wanted to create something lasting. For the first time in years, Naomi felt alive. It wasn't money in her account or a bill erased. It was deeper. It was hope. She whispered to herself, "Maybe it isn't too late." And for a moment, she allowed herself to believe it. Naomi was bent over her sketchbook the next afternoon when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. She almost ignored it. Then she answered. "Naomi Blake?" Her heart stopped. That voice, deep, steady, unforgettable. "William?" she whispered. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I couldn't stop thinking about you." Naomi gripped the phone tighter. She had replayed their storm encounter in her head 100 times, but she never expected to hear from him again. "How did you get my number?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I have resources," he admitted. Then softer, "But I used them because I had to. I needed to know if you were real." Naomi's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to hang up, to protect herself from disappointment. But another part, the part that still felt the warmth of his words, "I owe you one," couldn't. And so she stayed on the line, listening to the silence that felt heavier than words. Their calls stretched into hours. William asked about her sketches, her brother, her life. He listened as if every detail mattered. Naomi felt herself open in ways she hadn't in years. Then, one evening, his voice grew firmer. "Have dinner with me." Naomi froze. The thought of sitting across from him in public, in his world, filled her with dread. "I don't belong in your circles," she whispered. "I'm a waitress. I'm a black woman from Queens. People like you don't—" Her voice cracked before she could finish. "Naomi," William said gently, "I don't care about the circles. I care about you." Her mind raced. She pictured the looks, the whispers, the judgment. She pictured her brother warning her to be careful, yet a part of her wanted to say yes, to see if the connection she felt in the storm was real under brighter lights. She finally whispered, "One dinner." The night of their dinner, Naomi's nerves nearly consumed her. She wore a simple black dress, the best she owned. Her hands trembled as she stepped out of a cab in front of a restaurant in Midtown. William was waiting, dressed in charcoal, his smile warm when he saw her. He led her past the lobby into a private elevator. When the doors opened, Naomi gasped. A rooftop garden stretched out before her. String lights glowed, flowers bloomed in the night air, and the city sparkled below like a field of stars. "I reserved it," William said softly, "because I wanted a place where we could talk without the world watching." Naomi's chest ached. It wasn't about showing off his wealth, it was about creating space for her. She whispered, "It's perfect." Yet as they sat down, her stomach twisted. She was here, with a billionaire, high above the city, and she knew eyes from another world would never accept it. Dinner passed in quiet waves of conversation. William asked questions no one had ever asked her, about her parents, her sacrifices, her dream of design. Naomi hesitated, then admitted, "I used to want to be a fashion designer, but life doesn't wait for dreams." He studied her across the table, the city lights reflecting in his gray eyes. "And I used to think money would make me happy, but somewhere along the way, I lost myself." The honesty stunned her. This man who had everything, wealth, power, status, sat across from her and confessed he felt empty. And she, who had nothing but her sketches and survival, confessed she once believed in more. In that moment, their differences faded. Two lives, opposite in every way, revealed the same truth. Both of them were searching for something real. Naomi felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone in her loneliness. The rooftop air grew colder as the evening stretched on, but Naomi hardly noticed. William walked her back toward the elevator, his steps slow, as if he didn't want the night to end. At the corner of the garden, he stopped. His hand brushed against hers, tentative, almost shy. Naomi's heart pounded so hard she thought he could hear it. He lifted his hand to her cheek, gentle, searching her eyes for permission. Naomi didn't move. She couldn't. The world had narrowed to the warmth of his touch. Then his lips met hers, not with power, not with certainty, but with hesitation. A kiss, soft, trembling, like a man who hadn't felt alive in years. Naomi closed her eyes. For the first time in so long, she let herself lean into something tender. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless. "I'll call you tomorrow," William whispered, his forehead against hers. And, for once, Naomi wanted to believe in tomorrow. Tomorrow became every day. William called each morning just to hear her voice. He sent flowers to the diner, causing whispers among the staff. Their dates were nothing like the life Naomi knew. A dim jazz club in Greenwich Village where the music carried their silences. A private tour of a museum, walking through quiet halls hand in hand. Late-night walks in the city, where the skyline glittered like secrets shared only between them. With William, she laughed again. She found herself smiling without forcing it. He listened, truly listened, to her stories of childhood, of struggle, of dreams she buried. Naomi gave pieces of herself she had never trusted anyone with, and he gave her something she hadn't expected: peace. Still, each time she returned home, reality waited. The gap between their worlds stretched wide, even as their hearts drew closer. But for those fleeting moments together, Naomi let herself believe that love might be enough. It didn't take long for the world to notice. One morning, Naomi arrived at the diner to find newspapers scattered across the counter. Her heart stopped when she saw the headline. Billionaire with a waitress? Charity love? Photos of her and William leaving the jazz club filled the page. Online, comments spread like wildfire. Strangers dissected her life, her clothes, her worth. Customers whispered when she passed their tables. Some smiled with curiosity, others with disdain. Even friends at the diner looked at her differently now. Naomi forced herself to keep working, but inside, shame burned. The media painted her as an opportunist, a charity project for a lonely billionaire. She told herself to ignore it, but the words dug deep. For the first time, she wondered if kindness could turn into a curse. And still, William's voice on the phone soothed her. "Let them talk," he said. "They don't know us." Naomi wanted to believe him, but the whispers grew louder every day. At home, Daniel studied her carefully. He had seen the headlines, too. "Naomi," he said gently, "are you sure about this?" She looked away, pouring coffee to avoid his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he doesn't belong in our world. You've given up everything for me. I don't want to see you hurt by someone who doesn't understand us." His words pierced deeper than the newspapers. Daniel wasn't judging her. He was protecting her. But his doubt echoed her own fears. "I'm not his project," Naomi whispered. "He sees me." Daniel shook his head. "He's a billionaire, Naomi. People like him. They live in a different universe, and when they're done, they move on." Naomi clenched her fists. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Because somewhere in her heart, she knew he was right. Still, she couldn't let go, not yet. William invited Naomi to a charity gala, promising she'd be safe by his side. She spent her entire paycheck on a dress, simple but elegant. When William saw her, he whispered, "You look beautiful." Inside, the ballroom glittered with diamonds and chandeliers. Naomi felt the weight of every stare. Conversations paused when she passed. Smiles hid questions. A woman draped in jewels approached William, air-kissing his cheeks. She turned to Naomi, her smile sharp. "So nice when successful men give back to the community." The words sliced deeper than any headline. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. Laughter and whispers echoed around her, her throat closed. She muttered an excuse and fled toward the terrace, breath trembling. For the first time, she wished she had never stopped her car that night in the storm. William found Naomi on the terrace, her hands gripping the railing, eyes fixed on the city below. He stepped closer, his voice soft. "Naomi, don't listen to her. That woman—" Naomi spun around, tears burning. "Is she wrong? Am I just charity work to you?" William froze, pain flashing across his face. "Of course not. You mean more to me than— Then why does it feel like I'm a project? Like every glance, every whisper is proof I don't belong here." Her voice cracked. "Look around, William. They see me as a black waitress. You see me as someone who saved you in the rain. None of it is real to them." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. The space between them felt wider than the ballroom. Money, race, class, every barrier was there, standing tall. "I can't breathe in your world," Naomi whispered. And for the first time, William had no answer. The whispers became headlines. The headlines became storms. Naomi couldn't step outside her apartment without cameras flashing. Paparazzi swarmed her building, shouting questions with cruel precision. "Are you pregnant? Are you after his money? Gold digger, is that what you are?" Their words cut deeper than knives. Naomi tried to walk past, but the weight of judgment pressed her shoulders down. At the diner, customers stared longer, whispered louder. Strangers came in pretending to order, only to dig for gossip. Her brother Daniel was chased on campus, reporters demanding to know about their family finances. Naomi saw the hurt in his eyes and realized the chaos had spread far beyond her. At night, she cried into her pillow, wondering if love was worth the ruin of her life. William kept calling, promising protection, but his voice felt far away. The storm wasn't ending. It was consuming her. Naomi sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand. William's voice on the other end was raw, pleading. "Stay with me in the penthouse. You'll be safe. No one can touch you there." Her throat tightened. "And prove every headline right? That I'm just hiding behind your money? I can't, William. Naomi, I love you. Don't let them take this from us." She closed her eyes. The word love pierced her, but so did the chaos it brought. She pictured Daniel, exhausted, cornered by reporters. She pictured her own face on magazine covers, labeled a mistake. "I need space," she whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, unbearable. Finally, William said, "How much space?" "I don't know." When she ended the call, her chest felt hollow. She wanted to run into his arms, but instead she turned off her phone. For the first time, she chose distance over love, and the choice shattered her. The days that followed were brutal, but Naomi refused to break. She buried herself in the Patterson Commission, pouring every ounce of pain into fabric and thread. Late nights at her tiny table became her sanctuary. Each stitch was a step back toward herself. Each line of embroidery reminded her she was more than a headline. Daniel noticed the change. He watched her work with quiet pride, though worry never left his eyes. Naomi smiled at him, promising without words that they would be okay. For weeks she ignored the outside world. She ignored William's silence. She ignored the ache in her chest that whispered his name. Instead, she focused on creating something that mattered. Not for money, not for survival, but for beauty. Naomi had lost almost everything, but she was determined not to lose herself. At the final fitting, Sarah Patterson stepped into the gown Naomi had spent sleepless nights creating. The room went silent. The dress shimmered with elegance, simple yet radiant. The skirt flowed like liquid silk. The bodice hugged perfectly, delicate beadwork catching the light. Sarah turned toward the mirror, eyes wide. "Naomi, it's perfect." Her voice cracked with emotion. Richard Patterson placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, his own eyes shining. "You've given her more than a dress. You've given her a dream." Naomi's throat tightened. For years, she believed her art was worthless. Now it stood alive before her, breathing hope into another woman's life. As Sarah twirled, laughter filling the room, Naomi realized something powerful. Her value was not defined by whispers, headlines, or even William Hayes. Her value was here, in the vision she carried, in the beauty she created. And, for the first time, Naomi believed it. A week after the fitting, Naomi walked home through the crisp autumn air, her heart lighter than it had been in months. For once, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. Then she saw the crowd. Dozens of people pressed against velvet ropes outside the towering Hayes building. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Naomi stopped, curiosity pulling her closer. A massive banner hung above the entrance. Hayes Global presents a new era in American fashion. Her stomach twisted. Fashion. She thought of her sketches, of the dreams she had buried and then cautiously revived. Against her better judgment, she slipped into the building with the crowd. The lobby had been transformed into a runway. Lights bright, music pulsing. Naomi found a place in the back, her breath shallow. Then William Hayes appeared on stage, commanding the room. "Tonight," he announced, "you will witness something new, something born not from wealth, but from vision." Naomi's chest tightened. Something told her this night was not just about business. It was about her. The first model stepped onto the runway. Naomi's heart stopped. The dress was hers. The exact design she had once drawn in the margins of an order pad. The lines, the silhouette, every detail matched her sketches. Another model followed, wearing a gown Naomi had sketched during sleepless nights in Queens. Then another, and another. Each piece came from her notebooks, from the dreams she thought no one had ever noticed. Her hands trembled as realization sank in. William had kept them. Every sketch she thought forgotten, he had turned into reality. Tears blurred her vision. Anger and awe collided inside her chest. He had gone behind her back, but he had also believed in her more than she ever believed in herself. Around her, the crowd gasped at the beauty of the collection. Naomi stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. This wasn't just a fashion show. It was her life laid bare on the runway. When the final model left the stage, William stepped forward again. His voice carried across the hushed room. "The designer behind this collection is not me," he said. "It is Naomi Blake, a woman who gave me more in one night of kindness than I'd found in decades of power." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers spreading like fire. Naomi's name echoed from his lips to every corner of the room. "She matters more than all the money I own," William continued. "These designs are proof of her vision. But more than that, she reminded me what it means to be human." The ballroom erupted. Applause thundered, louder than Naomi could bear. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted. And through it all, William searched the crowd until his eyes found hers. He stepped down from the stage, walking straight toward her. Naomi's heart pounded as every face in the room turned to watch. William stopped in front of Naomi. The crowd pressed close, waiting. He reached for her hand, his voice low but clear enough for all to hear. "What we have is everything," he said. "If you're brave enough to take it." Naomi's tears spilled over. For weeks she had fought the voices, the whispers, the doubts. She had told herself she didn't belong. But here, in this moment, she realized belonging was not given by others. It was claimed. She nodded through her tears. "Yes," she whispered. The room erupted again, applause like thunder. William pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the world could finally fall away. For the first time since that night in the storm, Naomi felt safe. Not because he was a billionaire, not because of the lights or applause, but because she had chosen love and love had chosen her back. Naomi had only stopped her car one rainy night, offering a ride to a stranger. She never imagined that small act would change everything. Not for money, not for fame, but for the right to live honestly. For the courage to dream again, and for a love that defied every barrier. As William's hand held hers, Naomi understood the truth. Sometimes the world will measure you by your worth in dollars. Sometimes society will try to decide who deserves love and who does not. But kindness breaks walls. Dreams demand to be seen. And love, real love, ignores every whisper of doubt. If Naomi's story touched you, share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Would you have stopped for a stranger in the rain? And don't forget to subscribe. More stories like this are waiting. Tales of resilience, hope, and the extraordinary power of love. Because sometimes, one small act of kindness can change everything.